so this is our release demo for Torus version 31. I am Amanda Buddemeyer, the technical product manager for Torus, so I'll be taking you through what is new in version 31. Thinking about our major features, we have some updates to the scheduling interface. We have a new mode for scoring assessments called Score as You Go. We have some improvements to downloadable reports for instructors. We have a new capability for injecting any number of different types of learning activities on pages using the LTI standard. So we'll learn more about that. And at the end, I'm going to go over some other updates that maybe aren't as big as the ones you see listed here, but are kind of nice to note, some little things that we managed to fit into the release today. I think I forgot to mention our release date for Torus version 31 is July 28th. So I'm recording this a couple weeks before that. As of today, Torus version 31 is not in production. It's not going to be released until July 28th. So everything I'm going to show you today is in a staging environment, as opposed to what you would see if you logged into Torus today. All right, so let's get right into it. First, we're going to talk about scheduling, and I just kind of have a list here for myself of things I want to remember that I am going over with you guys about changes. So I'm going to show you in the instructor interface what scheduling looks like. So as I go through in our staging environment, I do have our student environment, our instructor environment, and our author environment. And if you look in the bottom left corner, you'll see that I have kind of labels to help you differentiate what environment I'm looking in. So because we're looking at scheduling first, I'm going to start off in our instructor interface. So I am already in the course section for my demo course, which for today is called Torus version 31 release demo. It's based on my, if you've seen any of my previous demos, I tend to use a course called AI Generated Purple Unicorns. This is the same content that you'll be seeing today. So not real content, but just some silly content for demo purposes. All right, to get into our scheduling, I'm on our manage page, which is the default page that you get to when you access the instructor interface. And under curriculum, I'm going to go to schedule and assessment settings. And the first thing that you're going to notice here that's different from prior to version 30's release is that we've gathered kind of everything related to scheduling and assessment settings all in one place. And I think this was a little confusing sometimes for instructors that, for instance, schedule and then also assessment settings were in two different places, and they are so tightly related that the feedback we were getting is that having this all in one place would be helpful for our instructors. So we have 4 tabs here: schedule, assessment settings, student exceptions, and then the 4th one, advanced gating. So this is a feature that already existed in Torus, but it wasn't broadly available to all of our instructors. And I think that the reason for that is that it is a feature that can get a little bit confusing, and you do have the capability of creating, some problematic situations for students with this. So basically, what advanced gating is creating conditions where certain pages or certain parts of the content of the course aren't available until certain conditions are met. I'm not really going to get into it now. I am planning on doing a demo on advanced gating for our next month, our August Torus Community Meeting, for the feature demo, so you can look out for that. But for now, all I'm really going to say is this is now a feature that's available for everyone. And come to the meeting next week or check out the recording on our website if you want to learn more about how advanced gating works. These middle 2 tabs assessment settings, and student exceptions. The contents of the tabs aren't really different from what you would have seen before. When we get a little later into our demo, I will be talking about some things that are different here in the assessment settings tab, but by and large, these are very similar. Most of the differences that we're seeing are in the scheduling tab. So the first thing that you might notice when, if you're familiar with what scheduling looked like before version 31, is that we do have some nice look and feel changes. Just some interface changes where we have this, zebra striping with, that highlights as we roll over. We have some color coding here that goes with different units of the course. And we'll see when we get into the schedule that color coding carries on through. As we go through, we'll see some other nice look and feel changes. But this is just generally meant to be a little bit easier to kind of navigate, since we do have this big, long schedule, than it had been before. Another feature that our instructors have really been asking for is expand and collapse all. So I can expand, can see everything. Of course, I can collapse all. And then the other thing I can do here is search. So if I'm going to talk a little bit about score as you go versus score at the end assessments in the next section. So I have some assessments I set up for that. If I just type in score into the search here, it already is going to come up, and you'll see it makes it a little bit easier to find what you're looking for, especially for a larger class. But then I can collapse all, or I could expand within this. And then moving on, if I go to set schedule, this is a feature that already existed prior to version 30, but we've got some new stuff. This already existed. This is where we're setting for our default schedule that we want to set up. What are the dates? Like if you always want things to be due on a Friday, for instance, you could kind of set that here. I'm just going to leave it now where it's on every day. Again, this hasn't really changed from last time. We do have a new feature here of set default layout. And this gives us an option of, well, do not set assessment due dates, set assessment due dates according to the sequence of the course content, set assessment due dates at the end of each section. So I do want to show you how these two function differently, because when you first pick these, they might look pretty similar, but I'll show you how they are different. So I'm going to start off with set assessment due dates according to the sequence of course content. I think this is the one option that we had before. And now we're going to populate a full schedule for the course. One thing I do want to point out now that we have items in here is that one of the nice things in our look and feel is that as you open and close sections, like right now, this top level unit and this module here, we have these kind of brackets as opposed to this bar. As I collapse, the brackets are for something that's open that has stuff under it. So as I collapse things, then this becomes a bar, but if I open it up, then I get the nice bracket that I can kind of use to see everything underneath it. And as I mentioned, the color coding also helps you see this is everything that's under this bar. That's not going to be super helpful for either our colorblind or our vision impaired community members, but it is just one more way to try to differentiate what you're seeing here. So you'll see that we have a schedule that's been made where as we go through the course, kind of hierarchically, what the content is, it's setting up some default timelines for us, and it's setting up some due dates that we can see here. And I think the difference between our options for a default schedule are easiest for a section that has a bunch of stuff in it. So I'm actually going to expand everything. And if I come down here, then I can find, here's something that has several due dates in it. If I roll over this, I have the option, when I'm hovering here, I see this becomes a little hand. I can just drag the whole thing and the due dates come with it. The other thing I can do if I just want to make this bigger, so I want to make a longer time that we're spending on this module, is if I come to this little bar at the end, then my little hand turns into this other kind of cursor, and I can actually expand it. And what I can see here is as I expand it, it's spreading out the due dates across this time. So I have one that's due earlier on and one that's due later. Now if I clear out my schedule and I go back to set schedule, I'm going to still pick the same, 5 days a week, but now I want to pick set assessment due dates for end of each section. And if I go back here, then I'll see if I expand this out, it's just going to drag them, whereas the first option kind of will spread out. But of course, if you have a bigger course, you're going to have a lot more than two. It's just going to spread out the due dates, across the time period that, that you're covering this unit or module or section. Then if I have set them at the end, then everything is going to stay at the end, no matter how I move this around or expand or contract it. So those are some nice defaults you can start with. Of course, as you're kind of seeing as I'm dragging these around, you can customize anything. I can grab this guy and I can move it. I also, just like prior to version 31, I do have, when I pick this, then down here, I can see for this assessment, I can set an available date and a due date. It could be also a suggested or in-class activity. So this part isn't really different from before. You still have that ability to customize things as much as you like. All right, coming back up here, then some other features I want to draw your attention to. We have the agenda visibility, and we know that there are some instructors who like having an agenda there and some who don't like having the agenda. So you can turn this on and off, with a toggle here. And something that I think is a really nice new feature, just to kind of see, so that you can really easily see what are your students seeing, is this view feature. So if you click on this, you have view agenda and view schedule. So if I click into view agenda, oh, it's telling me to save my work. I can just click view after saving and it will automatically save. And now it's going to pop up so I can see as a student, it's actually not just showing me the agenda, it's showing me the home page. That probably should say view home page, but it's showing me now what the schedule here looks like. I could go to view full schedule to go to the schedule tab here, and I can kind of see how everything is set up with my due dates. This, what I'm showing you right now, looks really similar to what this would look like. Actually, pretty much the same as what it would look like in, prior to version 30. But there are some nice changes that we've implemented if you choose not to have a schedule. So previously, it wasn't really always the greatest look and feel for courses that don't have a schedule, that are more self-guided. But now if I come in here, let me just clear out this schedule, and then I go back, then I can see, I have an agenda here where there's not a schedule, so it's just kind of showing hierarchically, what are the next several things that are coming up. It's really removing any language around, the dates, next week, or any time frame. You'll notice as you go throughout the student interface that anything, you had seen several things that said not yet scheduled, which I know was frustrating for folks if it was a self-guided course and things never got scheduled, because not yet scheduled implies it's going to be scheduled. So those are all gone. I think it's just a little bit of a nicer user experience for self-guided courses here. And of course, if I just get rid of the agenda and I go, so this again is a little misleading. It probably should say view homepage, but if I go to view agenda, it's going to show me now that the agenda is gone. My course progress, which had previously been underneath, is now going to kind of spread out here so that, it's a little bit of a nicer look and the agenda isn't there. And then if I go, I am going to really quick set a schedule here just so I have a schedule. And if I go here and I go to view schedule, again, it wants me to save, then it's going to take me into the schedule tab here so I can see, again, what are the students going to see as far as schedules? Is this what I intended, what I intend for them to see as an instructor? One thing I think that is a little bit odd here is if I clear the schedule. So now again, I'm unscheduled. It's a self-guided course. There's no particular schedule, and I go to view schedule. It still shows me this schedule page, but one thing that is, that we're going to see in version 31 is there actually isn't a schedule tab here. So the actual student experience would be that they can't get to this page because there's no schedule tab in our navigation here. But just because of a quirk of how we did this, you can see this page. It's just that if you don't actually have a schedule, this is a page that's unreachable by students. And I think the last thing I want to show, and again, I'm gonna really quick set a schedule here, is that I can, one of our new features is the ability to remove items without completely clearing out the schedule. I know that was a little frustrating for instructors before. So if I just want to remove and not have a due date for, let's say this checkpoint here, I can just right click, I can go remove from schedule, and it is removed. I mean, it's still in the agenda, so it's just an unscheduled item for students to see, which, I mean, you can, of course, see if you go into, I could go in here and I could still find that item, and it's still there. It's just not scheduled for students. Now, if I want to see, like, what are the things here that were removed? Maybe I removed something by accident, or I just want to remind myself, I can go to this filter and I can go to show removed, and I'll see that that this item has come back. It's just highlighted in red so that I can see that it has been removed. This isn't actually scheduled, but that way I do have a visual indicator that, that is something that exists. It's just not scheduled right now. It was removed from the schedule. So I think that this is everything I had to show you for scheduling. You can let us know if you have any questions, and once this is in, has been released after July 28th, then you can play around with it and let us know what you think.
So now I will do a demo of the new Score as You Go feature for Torus version 31. This is a feature that allows for a new mode for scoring assessments. Up through version 31, there really only was one way that assessments were taken and scored. It didn't really have a name before because it was the only way that we did it, but now we call it score at the end to contrast it with score as you go. So in a score at the end assessment, a student is going to go through an entire attempt, answer all the questions, and then submit to complete that attempt. And the system will score the attempt after that submit button is hit at the end. And then if there are additional attempts the student can take, then they can start another attempt. With score as you go, it works differently. So every action, and we'll see this in the demo, every action the student takes is going to impact the score in real time, so that as the student is going through the assessment, the instructor is going to actually see what the score is, and if there's an LTI connection, that will be reported back to the learning management system as well. And there's kind of some consequences of this scoring mode that you might not have thought of. So first I'm going to show you what score as you go is and kind of contrast it with score at the end, and then we'll talk about some special considerations. And I do have this slide just with a list here. This is really more than anything, it's for me as a reminder of what I need to go over in this demo. I'll also remind folks, especially if you just started watching the Score as You Go portion of this release demo and you didn't start from the beginning, you might not have seen, but this demo is going to take part in the student, instructor, and author interfaces. So as I go through, you'll see in the bottom left corner here, there will be a sticky that will tell you what interface of student, instructor, and author, and that'll make it a little easier for you to kind of identify where I am and what I'm doing. I'm going to start off here in the student interface because the first thing I want to show you is what is the difference between Score as You Go and Score at the end, and how is a student going to experience these two things differently. So I have set up two assessments here that I've creatively called Score as You Go assessment and Score at the end assessment The content of these two assessments is identical. I actually made one of these just by duplicating the page of the first one. So the content itself is the same, and a little bit later in the demo, I am going to show you how you can toggle between a score at the end mode versus a score as you go mode. It's super easy. But right now, I just have these two set up so that you can see differences in the student experience. So I'm going to start off by clicking into the score at the end assessment, which again, this is how assessments, the only way assessments worked in Torus up through Torus version 30. And then starting now with Torus version 31, then we have this other option that I'll show you in a moment to contrast. So I'm just going to remind you how assessments have gone here. We start off on this terms page. It's going to give us a due date here. It's telling us what the scoring policy is. In this case, it's best attempt. So you'll see students can take up to 3 attempts. We haven't taken any of those yet, and the best score of those 3 attempts is going to be what's recorded as the score. And it's reminding us that if we submit after the due date, it will be marked late. And in order to begin the first attempt, I'm going to click in here to begin first attempt. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is this banner at the top of the screen. So this is going to be a little bit different when we get to the score as you go activity banner assessment. Right now for a score at the end, it says scored activity. It says you can start, stop at any time and your progress will be saved. So this first sentence is going to be the same for score as you go, but the rest of it is going to be different. It says when you submit your answers using the submit button, it will count as an attempt. So make sure you have answered all the questions before submitting. And then as we scroll down, we're going to see we have 4 questions in this assessment, and we can pick the answer that we want. Like we can, just going to kind of randomly pick some answers here. And then at the bottom, there's this submit button. So if I've looked through and I think I've answered these questions the way I want, then I can go and I can submit my answer. Now it's going to tell me how I did. So I got this first one incorrect, 0 points. Incorrect. I got this one correct. I get 1 point. And I got this one also correct, so also 1 point. If I go back to my summary screen, now it's telling me I've taken 1 of 3 attempts, and for my first attempt, I got 2 out of 4 possible points. It tells me when I submitted it, I could click back in here to review that attempt. And now if I want to begin my second attempt, again, I get 3 attempts here, I could click in here, and I can start a whole new attempt where I maybe try to do better than this 2 out of 4. So that is the score at the end experience. So now I'm going to go back and we're going to look at if that same content that I had at the score at the end assessment, if I just flipped it to score as you go, how is that going to look different? So I'm going to click into score as you go. So right on this term page, we can see some differences. We have the same terms that we had before, but we have some extra terms here that go with score as you go. The score is updated as you complete the questions on the page, so it's just letting you know that your score is going to be updated as you go. You don't need to submit at the end. And you can attempt each question 3 times. And this is an important difference. And we still get 3 attempts. The attempts is the same as the score at the end assessment, but we're going to see those attempts aren't for us to go through the entire assessment and then submit at the end. It's that each question can be done 3 times. And I will say this button here is a little deceptive. I think we're going to need to update this because it's saying begin first attempt, the same as score at the end, but really we're going to see in terms of this entire assessment attempt like we had for score at the end, that's not how score as you go works. Once I click in here, you're going to see that we're not really going to have the opportunity to go through and submit at the end and then start again on a second attempt. It's just that we can do each question 3 times. So let me click in here and I'll show you what this looks like. Starting right here at the top, we see that the banner here is different. It says score as you go activity. You can start or stop at any time and your progress will be saved. Your score is updated as you complete questions on this page. So let's see, as we scroll down, how things might look a little different. First of all, we see this overall page score. Right now, it doesn't have a score because we haven't started this yet. So this is unscored as of yet. But as we scroll down to the questions, we're going to see that they each look a little different. We have an attempt count that's specific to the question, and if we look down at other questions, then each of them has this attempt count, and each of them has its own submit button. And there is no submit at the bottom if we scroll down. So again, this isn't as with score at the end where we go through the entire thing, we submit, and then the second attempt is starting over again. We're never going to start an entire assessment attempt. The attempts are at the question level. So let me try to answer this first one. I'm going to pick an answer. I'm going to hit submit. It's telling me I got the answer incorrect. And there's a couple of things I want to point out here. The overall page score has changed from no score to 0 out of 4. I've now attempted one question. I got it wrong, so I didn't get any points. So now I have a score for this, even though the score is 0. And I do want to go now, I just want to pop into the instructor interface. I'm actually going to go back to the manage page here. I'm going to go into my schedule. Oh, sorry, I'm going to the wrong place. If I scroll down here and I want to see my assessment scores. So the student that I'm looking at right now is this one, Amanda Lee, so conveniently right at the top here. And I'm just going to scroll over until I see. So you can see I had done my score at the end assessment, and it's telling me that I got a 2 out of 4 on that. But you can also see for my score as you go assessment, now I have, it says 0 out of 4. And as I mentioned before, if this is, if this course has been launched out of a learning management system like Canvas or Blackboard, so we're talking back to that learning management system through an LTI connection, this is actually going to be reported back. So in your learning management system, you're also going to see a 0 out of 4 score. So now I want to pop back here. What now? I've done one attempt, but now I get 3 attempts at this. So I want to try again. I'm going to say try a different answer now. Oh, first I have to reset question. So I'm going to click reset question. It gives me this little warning. I hit OK, and now I can try this again. Let's try this other answer. Submit response. I got it wrong again. So it's still 0 out of 1. I can see that I've used now my second of 3 attempts. If I want to reset again, I'm going to pick this answer, which I'm pretty sure is right. Hit submit response. Yes, I got it correct. So that was my third of 3 attempts. I now have 1 point. You can see 1 point. And let's go back to the instructor interface. And I do think I'm going to have to reload this page to see a change. Again, I'm Amanda Lee at this top row. And if I scroll over, now I can see I have 1 out of 4 points. So you're kind of getting the point here that with score as you go, as opposed to it just submitting at the end, every time the student does something on the page, it's going to update the score. So back here in the student interface, now I don't think I would actually want to redo this question because I've gotten it correct, but just if I did hit reset, this is no longer active because now I've done 3 out of 3 attempts. So now if I want to scroll down, then I have my second question, and let's say I get that. I think this is the correct answer, so let me submit. Yep, it's telling me I got it right. I did attempt 1 out of 3. If I look up at my overall page score, it's 2 out of 4. And then I could, in theory, reset. There's no reason in this case I would because I got it right, but because I haven't used all my attempts, I could try again. And because the scoring mode for this, if you recall, I'm going to cancel out because I'm not going to do that. The scoring mode for this is the best out of all the attempts. So let's say I actually did reset this. Let's say I said okay, and now let me pick something that's the wrong answer. Now it's telling me that I got it wrong and I got 0 out of 1 points, but look up here, I still have 2 out of 4 points because I already got this correct. It's going to take my best attempt because I picked best as my scoring policy. So in this case, I mean, again, I don't know why a student would keep going after they got the answer correct, but as long as you're using the best scoring policy and not, say, the most recent, then my overall page score is going to maintain that point value. And then just kind of to prove point I'm going to get to in a moment, I am going to just pick but not submit this, and I'll talk to you in a moment about why I did that. We'll come back to that. But so this is giving you kind of a general idea of how Score As You Go works. For as long as the student can work on this, they can just keep doing these question attempts, and they'll get immediate feedback, and the instructor and the LMS is immediately going to get an update on what the score is. So let me go back to my list here. We did talk a little bit about the meaning of attempts. For Score As You Go, attempts is the question attempts. For score at the end, it's the entire assessment attempt, which we sometimes call a page attempt. So now I want to talk about some of the assessment settings and how they might interact with a Score As You Go assessment. So for that, I'm going to go into the instructor interface. And I'm going to go back to my manage and go to schedule and assessment settings so that I can see. I'm going to go to assessment settings, and I can see what the assessment settings are. Here's my Score As You Go assessment and my score at the end assessment. So we can see right here, I set the attempts for both of these to 3. And again, for the score at the end assessment, that means 3 entire assessment attempts, 3 runs through and then submit at the end. For Score As You Go, it just means they're going to get 3 attempts at each question. A lot of these other assessment settings are going to work the same in terms of availability, due date, time limit, that sort of thing. Late start and late submit. You can see here the scoring strategy, again, is best. That's the default in Torus, is of the various attempts, what's the best score. I could set this to average or last, but I do think that most of our instructors like leaving this at best. You can do a grace period. Again, that works the same. So now we get to something that is a difference, which is the retake mode. And you can see that I have both of these set at targeted retake. So let me go back to my score at the end assessment just so I can remind folks, or if you weren't familiar with this setting, we can talk about what does targeted retake mean. If I go into my score at the end assessment, and if you remember, I had just done 1 attempt of my 3 possible attempts, and I got 2 of the 4 questions correct. So what targeted retake means is those 2 questions I got correct, they're going to be locked in. So we're going to see in a minute when I click in to start my second attempt, I'm only going to have the opportunity to answer questions that I got incorrect in the first attempt. If this was set to normal, then when I went into my next attempt, I would be able to answer all 4 questions, and therefore I could potentially get something wrong that I didn't get wrong the first time. So what targeted retake means is once they get it right, it's locked in. And let's click in here and we'll see how this looks. Now, if you recall, it was the first 2 questions I had gotten incorrect, so those kind of look normal. But where here I'm in question 3 and 4, it's actually already marked correct. I'm locked into my correct answers. So the only thing I can do with this attempt is to improve my score. And so, let's see, I think it's this. And I'm actually going to try to get something here that I think is wrong. So I think I'm going to get this one right and this one wrong, and we'll see. I can't do these last 2 that I already got right. And when I submit, it's telling me I got that one right, I got this one wrong. So now I actually, if I go back to my summary screen, I'll see now I got 3 out of 4. So my score can only increase, and I can't get something wrong that I had gotten correct before. That's what targeted retake means. Now, in Torus, the way that targeted retake works is that when this entire assessment attempt is finished, it's going to do its calculation of, oh, what was right and what was wrong, and we're going to lock in those answers. And unfortunately for score as you go, as we had said before, we have attempts that are only on the question. We never get to another attempt where we're restarting the entire assessment as we do with the score at the end, which means that targeted retake, as it works right now in Torus, it just doesn't work. So you had seen before that I had gotten an answer correct, and then it let me actually answer it and get it incorrect. Now, because I had my scoring mode set to best, it doesn't matter. And again, I'm not really sure why a student having gotten the answer correct would now go and make another attempt. So practically speaking, the way that Score as you go is set up, probably if a student gets the correct answer, they're not going to try again. And even if they do, if the scoring policy is set to best, it's not going to decrease their score. But technically, it is going to let them try, and they could get the right answer, the wrong answer. Sorry. So if I do think that we need to have kind of an updated concept of targeted retake for Score as you go that would prevent that. That's not something we got to in our first try at building this feature. It's something that hopefully we'll get to soon. If it's something that's important to you, let me know or let us know at a Torus Community Meeting, and we can make use of that feedback about how important that is to our community to build that. But the main point I'm trying to make here is that targeted retake, this setting for instructors, if you're setting a Score as you go assessment to targeted, this doesn't actually accomplish anything right now. It's going to behave exactly the same whether it's targeted or normal for Score as you go. I have one other thing I just wanted to mention on my list here that also has to do with that concept of Score as you go never actually finishing the end of that entire assessment attempt and starting a new one. And that has to do with activity bank questions. So if I go back into my Score as you go assessment, so several of these questions here are activity bank questions, questions 2 through 4 actually. And so that means that the answers here that the questions that are being asked here are being randomly selected from a pool of questions. And the way that this would work in a Score at the end assessment is that when a student goes back into a new full assessment attempt, it could recycle the question. They might not get the same question, from the pool that they got the first time. And I think that can be a nice feature that if you want, to have questions that have a really similar learning objective, maybe a pool of kind of similar questions, but if you're giving your students another variety of the question that maybe they'll connect with a little bit more, and they're more likely to get that one correct. It's a nice thing that you can do in Score at the end assessments, but with Score as you go, then you'll see, I got this wrong. If I reset, I'm going to get the answer right again, and I submit it. But you'll see this question didn't change. It didn't cycle. And again, that's because the logic in Torus is such that those questions cycle at the end of that full assessment attempt. And we would have to build this out as a new feature for Score as you go, questions that they could cycle for each question attempt. So again, if that's something that's important to you, then let us know. It is something we want to build out that we just didn't get to in our first kind of minimum viable version of Score as you go. Okay, going back to assessment settings here in the instructor interface. So the next thing I want to talk about is presentation. And this is traditional versus one at a time. So I have these both set to traditional, and I'm just going to update this to set them both at one at a time. So we can see how that looks different in the student interface. And I do think this is a feature that people confuse, kind of for understandable reasons. They confuse this with score as you go, but it's really not the same. It has to do with how the assessment looks, not how it is scored. So I'm going to go back into my student assessment, and I'm going to go in to show you how the one at a time presentation works in score at the end here, in our more traditional score at the end. So I have one more attempt, and now I've switched this to a one question at a time presentation, so I should see that when I click into my third attempt. And I do. So this is a one question at a time presentation. I still have my targeted retake, so it's not going to actually let me answer questions that I got correct last time. But you can see this looks different. Now, instead of having this long scrollable page where I see all of the questions at once, then I'm seeing one question at a time. And I can hit my next button here to go to the next question. I can also, I can hit previous to get back to the other one, so I can navigate that way. I can also navigate here. I can go to question 2, question 3, question 4. So the only difference here is what the student is seeing. I'm seeing one question at a time, but this actually doesn't get scored until I go and I finish attempt at the end here. I think a reason that this is confusing, and this is also something I think that we should adjust in the near future, is that here, if I'm picking something, I have this button that says submit response, and I think that gives people the impression that that is, then submitting and somehow scoring, but it's actually not. We should really just, I think that we probably should just get rid of this button, because all that it's doing is allowing us to go, it's just allowing us to go to the next question. It does give me feedback that this is the wrong answer, so that's something that's different from how score at the end was going. But if you notice, I don't have that overall score, and it's not updating in the instructor interface. It's just giving the student the feedback about whether they got this right or wrong before they go on to the next question. So really, this is impacting how the assessment looks and not how it's scored. Now, I also have switched my score as you go assessment to one question at a time, so you can see I still have this one question at a time presentation where I see one question at a time. I can navigate between them. But I do have my overall score, and it is allowing me, I have that same behavior that I had before in Score As You Go, where every time I take an action here, that changes the score. That's going to go through to the instructor, and it's going to go through to the learning management system. So here, I'm just going to come in here. I mean, this is going to behave the same way that it did before. I'm just going to answer this one. Let me pick this, submit. It gives me my answer, and because this is Score As You Go, I can still reset, which is not an option that I had with score at the end. I can't reset and answer again. I can still just go back and get to the end, submit, and then start a new attempt. So that's just kind of giving a little bit of an overview of that one question at a time and Score As You Go are not the same thing. One question at a time has to do with what the student sees, and that's why it's called a presentation mode. It's just how the student is able to look at the assessment. Score As You Go actually impacts how the assessment is scored and when it's scored. All right, and my next assessment setting here in the instructor assessment settings is actually scoring mode. So this is what we've been talking about here. So this score at the end is set to score at the end. Score As You Go is set to Score As You Go. And you can see switching between them is this easy. I can flip from score at the end to score as you go. I'm not going to actually do that because that's going to mess with my demo. But if I just switch to this between score at the end, and score as you go, it will flip the scoring mode in the that the student is experiencing. And while I'm showing you this, then I also want to just show in the authoring interface. I'm just going to pop in here quickly. I'm going to go in here to where my two assessments are. So you can also set the scoring mode here. If I go to my options, it's actually called scoring policy here, but you can see it's the same thing. Score as you go, it's score at the end. So this is something authors can set, and it will come through to when the course section is made. But then instructors can also, like if it's been set one way in the authoring interface, then the instructor could override that as well if they want it to be scored differently. I'm not really going to get, I don't really think most of the rest of the assessment settings here are any different between the two scoring modes, so I'm not really going to get into those. But checking back with my my laundry list here, the one other thing I need to talk about is what happens when you publish a change to an assessment while students are in mid-attempt. So the way that this works for score at the end is that, let's say I come into the authoring interface and I go in and I make a change to my score at the end assessment. So if I go in here, let's say I add a question. So I'm going to come in here and add a question, and we'll just say this is a new question. And I'm not going to do this yet, but I could make this change. It has been saved, and I could go and publish this and push this through to the course section. And let's imagine there's a student who is in the middle of a score at the end attempt, and this change happens. The way that Torus has been designed is that this change is not going to appear in the middle of a score at the end attempt. And I think that you can, maybe imagine why this would be a bad idea to change this in the middle of an attempt. I mean, in this case, I've added a question right at the beginning of the assessment. If you imagine that student is maybe, halfway through a long list of questions, they don't even see that that a new question has been added at the beginning, so maybe they don't answer it and they hit submit, and then they get that question wrong because they didn't know there was a new question. Similarly, I could change the wording in these questions. We just have a policy for these assessments that once the student starts the attempt, then any changes that are published, they're not going to see until they submit that attempt. And then when they start a new attempt, then they would see the new question or whatever the change was, because kind of messing with what they're seeing in the middle of an attempt really isn't fair. So again, with score as you go assessments, then we have a difference given the fact that we have these entire assessment attempts or page attempts for score at the end, but that never happens with score as you go. We never have a student submit when they get to the end and then they start a new attempt where they're starting fresh. So this policy that we have where they only see the change when they start a new attempt, it's not really something that is workable for score as you go. I'm going to come up here and come back and go and make a change in my score as you go assessment now. Here I'm going to do this similar thing. I'm going to add a new question. I'll say this is a new question in my score as you go assessment. And this is saving, it's saved. So imagine that you have a student who started their score as you go assessment, and maybe they might have started it early depending on how the course is set up. They might have days, weeks, months to go through this assessment from when they started it, and the authors or instructors realize there's a mistake, or they realize there's something that was supposed to be in there, and they publish the change. But any student who has already started that score as you go assessment, if we had the same policy that we had for scores at the end, they would just never see that change. And they also don't have the same risk that a student would have in the score at the end. The risk there was that the student was going to go through and submit that attempt and then have missed something and have gotten something wrong. That's not a risk for score as you go, because they have the same number of question attempts on all of the questions. They're never going to lock themselves out of that because they missed it. So therefore, the way that we handle publishing changes in score as you go assessments is a little bit different. It is going to show up. So just to demonstrate this, I'm going to come in and publish changes to assessments. I do want to point out that I have this automatically push the publication to update to all products and sections. That means as soon as I publish this, it is going to update in the section, even with the instructor not accepting the change. So here I'm going to publish. There we go. So now I'm going to go back to my student interface. And if I leave and I come back, I think this would also work if I just refreshed the page. Now I actually see this new question. So, and this would also happen with any change I could make here. If I changed wording, if I add a question, whatever happens, the change is going to appear, but you'll see that everything else I did is frozen here. So I still have, this question that was correct. I still have this one that isn't correct. I still, everything is still the same. On this one, I didn't even submit this yet. I just clicked on this. If you remember from earlier in the demo, I said I'm just going to click this. I'll explain why later. I didn't even submit this, but even though I've published a change, it's going to remember that the student picked this. It's going to freeze everything that didn't change. It's just going to make whatever the change is. And you'll also see for my overall page score, now instead of having 3 out of 4, I have 3 out of 5. Because it's acknowledging that now I've added a question. So this is just something to keep in mind, that if you are publishing a change to an assessment in the middle of a student has already started this, that change is going to show up for a score as you go assessment, whereas it would not show up for a score at the end assessment. That is my whole list. So that's everything I was going to say for score as you go. If you have any questions about this, or if you want to play around with it, and you need some input from me, please feel free to reach out. And I hope you enjoy using it. Now we're going to talk about instructor downloadable report improvements. I have here instructor CSV download report improvements, which, if you're not sure, CSV stands for a comma delimited file format, and so that's referring to the downloadable reports. As we're going to see, there's actually some improvements that are on the screen for instructor reports as well, but we did focus here on making those downloadable reports a little bit more useful to instructors. As I mentioned, if you're just joining for this part of the demo and you didn't see the intro, as I'm going into the interface here, you'll see that sometimes I switch back and forth between interfaces, and if you look at the lower left here, then it'll tell you what interface I'm in. Though because we're looking at instructor reports here, I am going to be doing this primarily in the instructor interface. All right, so I'll start off with changes to this first page that you see when you navigate to the instructor interface. This is the Manage page. And here you will notice, if you're used to using these reports anyway, that if we scroll down to this scoring section, there's a couple of things that are different here. One, there had been an additional link here to say download the gradebook. And also we had a link here that said quiz scores. So you will see as a theme, we're changing the language around quiz scores to assessment scores. Not every assessment is a quiz. So we do think that assessment scores is a little bit clearer. So you'll see that throughout several places in the interface here. So this goes to our assessment scores report, and up through version 30, so before this release, then we had a gradebook report and a quiz scores report, which we're renaming the assessment scores report. And those both were reports that showed very similar information. They were basically giving instructors a view into for each assessment that students had taken, and for each student, what was the score. And because those were really similar, and I think it caused some confusion between the two reports, we basically have collapsed them into one report. So that's why the link that said download gradebook is gone. Now it's just the assessment scores link here. So if you click into assessment scores, this interface is going to look very similar to what you saw before. Again, we're using this assessment scores language except instead of quiz scores, but the report is very similar. One thing you'll notice here that is a change we've made on the screen and not just in the downloadable report is that the order of the assessments before, and they appear in these columns, across the top of the screen. It had been in an order that was not very useful before. Now they're going to appear in the order that they appear in the course, kind of hierarchically. So starting from Unit 1 and Module 1, and then kind of going through the course. So I think that is a useful thing, both in this on-screen report and also in the downloadable report, that you get to see these in the order that that they would appear in the course. Now, I would click here to download the report, and instead of trying to download and then open, this report, I actually have prepared in a Google Sheet. These are just each tab here is one of the reports that I'm going to show. There's 3 different reports I'm going to talk about, just to kind of spare the time it would take for me to download and then import that into a Google Sheet. I have just already taken care of that. So the first one we're looking at here is the assessment scores report. And the first thing that folks might notice if they are familiar with this report is that these initial columns are a little bit different. And I will point out, in all 3 reports we're looking at, we're going to see these same 4 initial columns. We're going to see status, name, email, and LMS ID. So that's some uniformity between these reports where we're looking at students, that you're going to see the same information, and it's always going to automatically be sorted from columns from the left to the right. So these are sorted by student status. You see most of my students are enrolled, but I do have one pending confirmation. I have one who is suspended. And then within enrolled, these are the students organized by name, email, and so on and so forth. And again, these columns are going to go left to right in the order that the assessments appear in the course. But something that's different here that I think is providing more accurate information than what you were looking at before is that we're going to see 3 columns here for each assessment. And the reason is this first one, if you kind of look up here, you'll see the full name of the column. I have the points earned. So how many points did the student earn? In the next one, I have points possible. And if you're familiar with this report from earlier, there used to be a row up here that would just say, if I kind of insert a row here, and then it would say how many points are possible, and it would say, like, maybe this is out of 100 points. And then you would see each score. The problem with this is that it's not always accurate, because you might be making changes to an assessment where the points possible for every student isn't the same. Imagine if you had an assessment where you added questions or you made changes to the assessment, and therefore, maybe for the students who took the assessment earlier on, then they were getting this out of a total of 80 possible points, and then you added or you changed the point values, and later it was 100 possible points. So what we have here is, for every points possible, we have every points earned, we have points possible, so that if you never made any changes, it's just going to be the same value here for every assessment. But if there was some kind of change where the points possible changed, then you're going to see for that specific student when they took the assessment, what is the points earned out of points possible. And then we added, just for convenience, a third column that's percentage. So that is points earned divided by points possible. So for those of you who are just cutting and pasting these values, sometimes you're going back into an LMS or something. Here's an example of some of these students have taken this, and you can see the points possible here is the same. I didn't make any changes, but it's just confirming that, and then I can see the actual the percentage that they got. So if I do want to cut and paste this into an LMS or someplace else, then I have this nice column that's already calculated this for me. So it is going to be 3 columns. So for this first quiz, 1, 2, 3. Then I have another quiz, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. Each assessment is going to have 3 columns. And if you look in the title, you'll see, again, points earned, points possible, and percentage. Now you're not going to have those same columns on screen here. You can see that you just have one, and that's because here then we're actually having points earned out of points possible, just grouped into one column. And we do find that for our instructors who download the reports, sometimes again they do want to cut and paste that, or they're doing some kind of calculation on it. So they do want that. We have found that a lot of instructors want that information actually broken out for the downloadable version of the report. So that's why you have 3 columns for each assessment. All right, moving on. So that's it for this Manage tab. If I go into my overview and I look at my students, I have, so there's been no changes to this on-screen version of this report, but if I download this student report that just shows me who my students are, and where they are in the course and proficiency, that sort of thing, then we have some changes to the student report. Same first 4 columns as I mentioned, the same sorting and format, and we just made some adjustments here, so the information that you're seeing in the report here that's downloadable is exactly the same as what you're seeing on screen. We just made this report reflect the same information as this report, to make things a little simpler. And that's our change there. I would also point out, again, we're using this language assessment scores. This is really just a different way of accessing that same report that we saw on the Manage tab. It's the same thing. You're going to get the same thing if you download. So all of those changes I just mentioned are also in this assessment scores tab in the overview menu up here. And then if I go into Insights, I can look into units or modules here. So I'm just going to, for example, click into one of these modules. I can see this report with students that have, for this specific module, who are the students and what progress and proficiency do they have. And I do have, I can download a student progress CSV. I would say, so I can download a student progress CSV for this unit I have clicked into if I want to see specifically what, how students are doing in this unit. So one change I will mention that we made that I can't show you in the Google Sheet is if I go to download this and I click download student progress CSV, I just want to show you up here the name of the report. Something that I think was a pain point for some of our students, for some of our instructors, is that the name of the module, we had kind of an identifier for it, but we didn't actually have the name of the unit or module in the report. And therefore, if you imagine if you're going through and doing a bunch of these, you're clicking through a bunch of units or modules and you're downloading the report, if the name, then you're looking at reports that maybe have an identifier that the database can identify as being part of that unit or module, but there's nothing that you can look at that's readable to you. So now the name of this report is actually going to have the name of the unit or module to make it a little bit easier for instructors to identify what report they're looking at. And if I come into this unit or module progress report, there's not a ton of changes to this one other than we're using the same consistent first 4 columns and sorting strategy. We tried to make this a little bit more readable and usable. So hopefully that will be just some minor updates to make this report a little bit more usable for folks. So those are our main changes that we've made for instructor reports. I'm going to go back to my presentation here. So the next thing I have on my presentation here is LTI activities, and this is a really big and highly anticipated aspect of the release. And I don't want to disappoint. I think I already mentioned in the intro that I'm going to do a separate demo for that because we have been having some just some figuring out with some different useful tools. Some tweaks to how we're going to present that, and I think that if I do it a little bit later, then I can do better justice to what the feature set is. But I would also say, I mean, first of all, it's only going to be a couple of days, I think, until I get that demo out. So hopefully by the time most of you folks are actually looking at this demo, you will find the LTI activities demo posted on the website, and if I have time, actually edited to be part of this larger demo video. But also, if you are looking at this in the short time period between when we posted this demo and when we posted the demo for LTI activities, you can always reach out to me and ask if you need some guidance or want to get started setting this up. And that's it for our major roadmap item updates for version 31. There's a couple other smaller things, kind of little tweaks that we've made that I think are probably worth noting. I mean, there's a lot of different of improvements that we've made, and I will make sure the description links to the release notes for version 31. The release notes aren't actually released until the release comes out, which is on July 28th. So if you're looking at this before July 28th, there probably isn't a link for the release notes yet, just because they're not posted. But on July 28th or after, then you should find that, and you can really look through and just kind of look for yourself at all of the different improvements we have. But there's a few that I wanted to in particular call out. So I just picked four things that I thought were particularly notable of kind of smaller updates that we made. So I'm going to start off in the student interface. Again, if you look down here, you'll see this label for the student interface. And the first thing I want to show just has to do with outline view. So when I first click on my Learn tab, then the default I'm going to see here is the gallery view, where I have all of these cards. But many of our users actually prefer outline view. And a previous improvement that we had, I think this was from version 30 if I remember correctly, is you can do the expand all or collapse all of this if you want to look at this as kind of like the entire course that you can scroll through, or if you want to have the collapsed version. But this, and we do have a search here, but something that we kind of missed when we did some improvements on this page is that up through version 30, unless you hit the expand all, if you did a search, it was only searching the text that you could see on the screen. So those of you who had watched the Score As You Go update know I have some Score As You Go, or Score As You Go and a score at the end assessment here that I had very creatively called Score As You Go assessment and Score at the End assessment. What if I didn't really remember where that was? It's in one of these units. It might be buried somewhere. It could be in a module. Like I know that it's there, but what if I don't know? And if it's a big course, I might not want to just expand all and then be searching through. So a new feature that we built here is that this search works on the entire course, whether this is expanded. So if I just type in score here, there we go. It's telling me it's in Unit 2, Score As You Go assessment and Score at the End assessment. These are the same ones I looked at earlier in this same video when I was demoing Score As You Go. So that's just a little improvement to make it a little bit easier to kind of find things in the course. Another update has to do with the support modal. So on pretty much any page here, you can find this support modal. And one improvement we did was make this a little bit more consistent, where this is located and how you get to it on every page. That's going to make it a little easier for people to know, for users to know where to go if they need support. And if I click on this, I'm going to see that there are some nice improvements here. I have a link at the top to go to a knowledge base, so I might be able to find the answer to my own question if it's something simple. And then another thing is that I can upload files, which you can't do in previous versions. You could just do text. So now if I have a screenshot or something that will help explain what the problem is I'm looking at, I can put some files. And I will also say that behind the scenes, there's actually some more useful information that is being captured here that is going to help our community support folks to be able to diagnose the issue that they may have had to ask you, and maybe even if they were following up and you had already left the page, maybe you didn't remember what browser you were in, or some specifics about what was going on in your Torus session. We're just doing a better job behind the scenes of capturing that information. So hopefully between this modal being a little bit more consistent to find, having a couple bells and whistles here that you didn't have before, and then capturing that information behind the scenes, that is going to help our community support folks, that will improve a situation where a user does need help. And then also here in the student interface, the third thing I want to mention has to do with if you're using our AI activation points feature, which had been previously introduced in Torus version 30. So one thing, I'm going to go here to, I should probably expand all. All right, let me go to a page that I have an activation point set up in. And something I'm just going to explain before I click in is that the way for version 30 that we had designed activation points is when it first comes up, it comes in what we call a teaser window, which is kind of a mini version of the window. So here, if I click, it's going to bring up this window that I can type, and if I had a conversation history, I would see it here. But the version of this that we saw, for AI activation points was kind of a mini version of this window, again, that we call a teaser. And we did find that our users weren't really a fan of that. Sometimes it made it hard for them to even notice. I mean, you could click on the teaser window to make it full size, but a lot of our users didn't like that, and they wanted to get the full size window. So I will show by popular demand, coming in here, you can see that it's popping up a full-size window. I do have a page level activation point set up here. And then if I close that, I have a paragraph level activation point. And again, it's going to pop up the full window here and start talking based on the prompt and the activation point. And so I think that's an improvement that several folks were asking for. The other thing that I'm actually not going to fully explain, but I do want to point out here and kind of tease an upcoming feature demo, is in the instructor interface. And if I come into my Manage tab, and then I want to look at my schedule and assessment settings, I'm going to go into assessment settings. So earlier we had done a score as you go demo. Earlier in this video, and we had talked about this scoring mode, score at the end and score as you go. Something that got added, kind of best part of this larger score as you go feature, is what we call the replacement strategy here, the replacement policy. Where did I just go here? And I can see all questions remain the same for all attempts, and dynamic questions regenerate a new question. And this is something that only makes sense if you know what dynamic questions are. So I think it's a little bit out of scope for this release demo to get into dynamic questions and therefore how this replacement policy works. So I decided that for our September Torus Community Meeting, here is a plug, I will be doing a feature demo for dynamic questions. And if you wait for that and you come to the meeting or watch the video after the meeting, then you will have an understanding of dynamic questions, and then this setting will make more sense to you. But yeah, it's just a little bit out of scope to get in here. So that was it for a couple other notable updates I just wanted to point out. That is it for the demo. I will put my contact information. This is Amanda Buddemeyer, Technical Product Manager, and I'll put my contact information in the description for this video. So if you have any need for follow-up, any questions, any concerns, anything you want to know about Torus version 31, which will be released on July 28th, which as of the recording of this video is about a week from now, then please reach out and I would love to hear from you. Thanks.